There are invitations warm as sunlight, yet only a cold emptiness remains when you arrive. Evelyn, 68, carried with her a gift she had kept safe for decades, believing that tonight she would finally sit in the seat reserved just for her. But from the last row beneath the distant lights, she realized her place was never where blood ties had promised. It was where she was truly seen. Mornings in the small town of eastern Massachusetts always began with familiar sounds. The boiler giving a soft hiccup before settling into a steady rhythm, the flutter of pigeons' wings against the roof, and the milk truck rumbling down the narrow street. Evelyn drew back the curtains, letting the cool May light spill into the living room. On the sidewalk, new maple buds gleamed pale green, while faint traces of winter salt clung to the road like chalk that hadn't yet been wiped clean. She didn't make coffee right away. First, as she did every morning, Evelyn sat at the kitchen table, opened her scuffed-edged laptop and logged into her bank account. Her hands moved with practiced ease. Straight to autopay, scanning the 3 familiar lines: rent, Rachel; utilities, Rachel; top-up insurance, Rachel. They were voluntary contributions she sent to her daughter each month. She wasn't a co-signer on the lease, didn't hold the insurance in her name, just offered a little to ease Rachel's load. Long ago, she had added a note to each line. Voluntary, keep my part. A small but necessary reminder, because Evelyn knew how easily her heart could soften whenever she heard her daughter say, "Mom, I need you." The French press hissed and frothed at the sink as she poured hot water over the coffee grounds. The landline rang, a sound many homes had abandoned, but Evelyn kept hers as a piece of memory. The caller ID read, Noah Perez. She wiped her hands on the dish towel and picked up. "Hey, Miss Evelyn." Noah's voice was warm, quick. "The kids are rehearsing scenes from our town for the spring show. If you've got time, stop by. They stand a little taller when you're in the room." Evelyn smiled. "This month's a bit busy," she said, glancing at the wall calendar with its marked squares. "Dentist appointment, call roofer, and one thick red border. Opening night, Rachel. But I'll try. Thank you for thinking of me. I'll keep a seat for you in the hall," Noah replied, then hesitated. "You doing okay?" "I'm fine," Evelyn said. "You know me." They said their goodbyes. Evelyn carried her coffee to the front porch. The damp scent of the wooden steps rose into the crisp air. A small slip of paper lay on the steps. Winslow Floral, pick up Friday, orchid layer. She'd placed the order last week. Winslow Floral only stocked lays during graduation season, but Mrs. Winslow, silver-haired, her voice soft as wind, always set aside a white orchid lay for Evelyn if she called early. Evelyn picked up the note and a memory stirred. A late afternoon in 1985, when she was still teaching drama at a high school in Hilo, Hawaii. After her students' first performance, parents and children had poured onto the stage, draping her in lays fragrant with sea air and fresh blooms. In that moment, she understood that a lei wasn't just a decoration, it was recognition. "We see you. We know the work you've done." Ever since, even after returning to Massachusetts, she kept the tradition of giving a lei for moments she felt were worth being seen. Looking toward the street, Evelyn caught her reflection in the kitchen door glass. A gray-haired woman, slight in frame, her shoulders subtly lowered from a lifetime of carrying weight. Sometimes she noticed the tilt of her head, how she listened as if standing in the wings, waiting for a cue, an old reflex etched into her muscles from years of directing plays. Back in the kitchen, she opened a drawer and pulled out a soft-covered notebook, flipping to the opening night, packing list page. The line lay, pick up at Winslow, Friday noon was already crossed off. Below it, navy dress, press, flats, gel inserts, light coat. She added hem clips. Experience had taught her that every opening night required something to be clipped or fixed. All that morning, Evelyn pressed the dress, aired the cardigan, and checked the small wooden gift box where she would place the lei. No one had asked her to be so meticulous. Still, she believed in the quiet care of details, like a director tending to each lighting cue, even when the audience never noticed. At noon, she stopped by the library to return books and met Mrs. Winslow at the counter. "Your lei's ready for Friday," the florist said. "White orchids, thick petals, keep cool well." Evelyn nodded. "Plain, no ribbon." "As always, Mrs. Winslow smiled. Back home, her phone chimed. A text from Noah. "Got 2 seats in the middle row for you. If you're busy in Boston, next week's fine. The kids are doing scene study from our town. They're nervous, I want you to hear them. Evelyn sat on the wooden chair, reading the words our town repeatedly. 20 years ago, she had directed that play for her seniors. Emily's scene, watching a single ordinary day of her life, still made Evelyn's chest tighten. We don't even have time to look at one another. That line she knew never grew old. She closed the phone. Outside the window, the noon sun spread over the neighbor's roof. Evelyn wondered if the trip to Boston ahead of her might be one of those rare moments still worth being seen. The one she saved her lays for. That afternoon, Evelyn's cell phone rang. Rachel's name lit up the screen. They didn't often call each other. Most of their communication came through brief texts or emails about bills, insurance, and other essentials. Rachel's voice was bright, a little rushed. Mom, this Friday is my opening night. I'll leave your ticket at will call, so get there a little before curtain. Evelyn could hear the tapping of a keyboard on the other end, punctuated by someone's laughter in the background. I'm swamped, but I want you there. Keep the outfit simple, okay? We're going for a unified look. Evelyn smiled without thinking. I'll be there, she said. That short answer made her think of all the times she'd agreed without hesitation. But when she set the phone down, old memories crept in. Last Christmas, Rachel told her, "Don't prepare anything, I'll handle it," and then canceled at the last minute because Matt wants to go to his friend's place. On Evelyn's 65th birthday, there was only a group text with a cake emoji, no invitation, no phone call. The year before, she'd driven 2 hours for a family dinner, only to find they'd gone ice skating with another group. Not accidents. Not oversights. More as if her presence had never been the center of their story. This time, Evelyn wanted to believe it would be different. She pulled open the bottom drawer and took out the navy dress hanging in its fabric sleeve since last summer. Soft drape, hem falling just below the knee, a modest round neckline, her usual choice when she wanted to look put together but not overdone. Beside it lay a pale gray cardigan, soft knit, pearl buttons. On her vanity she placed a small brooch shaped like a theater mask, a gift from a student back in her Hawaii teaching days, like a quiet punctuation mark for the outfit. She imagined walking into the hall, presenting the lei to Rachel in front of the audience, that mix of pride and familiarity. She polished the wooden lei box and lined it with fresh white tissue paper. In the evening, she called Winslow Floral for a final confirmation. Mrs. Winslow, the white orchid lei, Friday at noon. I'll be there on time. Please keep it chilled, no ribbon. Mrs. Winslow's voice was as gentle as always. Don't worry, Miss Evelyn. Thick petals, they'll last. We'll keep it in a plastic box just for you. Evelyn nodded even though she knew the florist couldn't see her. After dinner, she opened her soft-covered notebook, turned back to the packing list page and added a few more items: canvas tote for carrying the lei box, wet wipes in case of sticky floral glue, and hem clips as a precaution. Then she wrote a new line. Sheer red lipstick, a small change, since she hadn't worn lipstick out in a long time. While she was jotting notes, her phone chimed. A text from Rachel. Make sure you come early before everyone's in the auditorium. Don't put the lei on yet, I'll attach it after the photos. Evelyn reread the message. It wasn't "I want you to give it to me," but "I'll attach it." A slight difference, yet enough to leave a faint bitterness at the back of her tongue. Still, she closed the notebook and set her pen on top. She knew she would go and prepare carefully because that was how she kept her faith, not in what others did, but in how she chose to show up in their lives. Night settled in, the sea wind slipping through the cracks in the door, carrying a faint salt scent. Through her bedroom window, Evelyn saw the neighbors' lights glint against the young leaves of the maples. In her mind, she played out the whole of Friday night. The lit audience rose, Rachel on stage with a white lei at her neck, her smile confident, and Evelyn in her neat navy dress, sitting somewhere close enough to catch each expression. She didn't let herself imagine what came after. Friday morning, Evelyn woke earlier than usual, without an alarm. The May light slipped through the curtains, clear and calm as spring water, reminding her of those mornings in Hawaii long ago, when opening a window meant seeing sunlight pooled on hibiscus blooms. Standing in the kitchen, teacup in hand, she looked out over the still quiet street. The maples had unfurled their pale green leaves, trembling gently in the early breeze. She wore the navy dress she had pressed the day before, the gray cardigan draped over her shoulders, and flats with gel inserts, just in case of the theater's steep staircases. On the table, the wooden box with its white orchid lei rested neatly inside a canvas tote, cushioned by a layer of tissue paper to keep it cool. Before leaving, she made one slow loop through the house, as if committing each corner to memory before her absence. The vase of yellow tulips on the dining table, the book lying open on the armchair, the photograph of Rachel at 10, grinning wide in her costume for A Midsummer Night's Dream in the school play. She chose the coastal road into Boston. Not the fastest route but familiar, easy. The road hugged the water's edge, waves tapping against the stone seawall, white froth breaking apart under the sun. On NPR, an interview played. A young New York director spoke about reviving community theater's spirit after the pandemic. His voice carried excitement and gravity as he spoke of that moment when the audience and actors hold their breath together, just before the lights come up. Evelyn smiled to herself. She knew that feeling well. She had seen it hundreds of times in her students' eyes. At the toll station near Salem, the attendant, a middle-aged man in a faded baseball cap, glanced at the wooden box on her passenger seat. "Who's that for?" he asked, his voice curious but warm. "For my daughter," Evelyn said, her hand resting lightly on the box as if to shield it. "She's performing tonight." He nodded, handed back her change and said, "Hope you have a night to remember." Evelyn said nothing more, only nodded and tucked the blessing away as a small lucky charm for the evening ahead. Nearing downtown Boston, she found a spot in a multi-level garage 3 blocks from the theater. With time to spare, she stopped at a cafe on the corner, a small place with expansive windows, warm air, and the mingling scents of fresh roasted coffee and waffle cones. She ordered hot black tea and a blueberry scone, choosing a table by the window from which she could see part of the theater sign in the distance. The wooden lei box sat on the table before her, and she smoothed a hand over the lid as if reassuring both herself and the flowers inside. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Don't put the lei on yet. I'll attach it after the photos." Evelyn read each word slowly. "Not you give it to me, but I'll attach it," a slight shift, yet one that made her heart dip just a little. She set the phone face down and took a sip of tea. Outside, the street was growing busier. Groups of well-dressed people walked past, holding tickets or envelopes, all headed in the same direction. A young woman carrying a toddler leaned close to whisper something that made the child laugh out loud. Evelyn was suddenly pulled back to the night Rachel had played the lead in middle school. She had sat in the front row, her heart pounding as her daughter spoke her first lines. Back then, Rachel's eyes had always searched for hers. When the clock struck 6:30, Evelyn gathered her things, tucked the lei box into the tote and stood. Out on the street, the May sunset spread a golden glaze over the red brick walls, casting the theater district in the glow of an old painting. The theater's marquee came into view after the bend, its gold-lettered sign catching the last light of day. The crowd lined up at the entrance, voices overlapping with the rhythmic click of shoes on the pavement. Evelyn drew a deep breath, tightened her grip on the tote's handle, and stepped up toward the doors, ready for the night she had spent all week preparing for. Evelyn stepped into the theater lobby, the scent of polished wood mingling with the faint trace of perfume left behind by patrons who had just passed through. Overhead, crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow, their light bouncing off the glossy tile floor and the arches of the old doorways. She tightened her grip on the tote, the wooden box with the white orchid lei resting carefully inside, as if one jolt might shatter the gift and the meaning she had tucked into it. The will call counter sat to the right with a small line waiting. Evelyn set her Massachusetts driver's license on the counter when it was her turn. She said clearly, "Ticket under Evelyn Rose for tonight." The young blonde clerk in a black blazer took the ID, typed, scanned the screen and frowned slightly. "I'm sorry, ma'am. There's no Evelyn Rose listed." Evelyn leaned in, as if her name might be hiding somewhere on the monitor. "My daughter Rachel said she'd leave it for me here," she said, her voice calm but quieter. The clerk tried searching by last name, then by phone number, which Evelyn spelled out slowly. Still nothing. "Are you sure the ticket was left at will call?" The question was polite, but carried that faint automatic skepticism of someone used to sorting out mix-ups. Evelyn felt a fine wire inside her chest pull taut. She took out her phone and called Rachel. One ring, two, then straight to voicemail. Honey, I'm at will call and they can't find my name. I'll buy another ticket. See you afterward. Her voice stayed steady, though her hand trembled for a moment around the phone. Putting it away, she turned back to the counter. We're almost sold out tonight, the clerk said. But someone just returned a ticket a few minutes ago, last row Z against the wall. Evelyn nodded. I'll take it. She paid in cash and took the still warm ticket, the scent of fresh ink faint in the air. It felt like she had bought not just entry to a performance, but a seat on the edge of her story. Following the usher's directions, she stepped into the auditorium. Seat Z14 against the back wall. From here, the stage seemed smaller, the actors reduced to silhouettes in the wash of light. Evelyn set her bag on the seat beside her, the lay box within reach, a reminder that the gift, as yet unoffered, was still whole. The house glowed in soft gold. In the pit, the orchestra tuned, violin weaving into clarinet, the first notes of the evening. Evelyn's eyes traveled toward the front rows, where the stage lights angled down, catching each face. She saw Rachel, hair in a neat bun, dressed in a simple but elegant black dress, leaning in to chat with a well-dressed group. An older woman held an enormous bouquet wrapped in shimmering paper. A man, likely Matt, sat in the middle seat, his arm resting along the back of Rachel's chair as she laughed. There was no space in that row. The seat Rachel had once said she was saving for Mom was occupied by a young man scrolling through his phone. The house lights dimmed. The murmurs faded. Rachel stepped onto the stage, poised, smiling brightly. Her voice carried, "Good evening, thank you for joining us for opening night." She thanked the director and the crew, and gave a special thanks to Matt's family for coming to support, reading each of their names with warm emphasis. Not once did she mention Evelyn. Applause rose, filling the space. Evelyn kept her gaze on the stage, though the corner of her eye still caught the front row's glow, the bouquet, the beaming faces, and the deep fault line between her and her daughter. She drew a breath, her fingertips brushing the lay box through the tote, the cool wood grounding her in the moment. On stage, the lights shifted. The first character spoke, and the audience sank into the story. But Evelyn felt the distance more sharply, not just the rows from Z to A, but the span from Rachel's heart to hers, a gap no stage light could bridge. The quiet laughter of the crowd and the faint rustle of programs turning pages formed a soundscape that felt foreign. She sat back, but her posture stayed straight, her eyes fixed on the stage like the proper audience member she'd always been. Inside, though, one thought was growing. Tonight, this lay might never reach the neck it was meant for. As the stage faded to black and the orchestra fell silent, 3 chimes rang out, their metallic tones lingering in the air to signal intermission. Evelyn rose with the tide of audience members, the wooden lay box cradled in her hands like something fragile, both a gift and a thin ticket into a moment she had once imagined. The crowd spilled into the lobby, heels clicking against the wood floor, voices overlapping into a dense hum, cut now and then by bursts of laughter or the clink of glasses at the bar. The scent of white wine and cheesecake mingled with expensive perfume, surrounding her until she felt as if she were already standing in a foreign place she had wandered into. She pressed herself against the wall near the exit, avoiding the knots of conversation. Light from the chandeliers poured in gold, glinting off the glossy paper of an oversized bouquet someone carried in their arms. The lay box felt small, unassuming in her hands, swallowed by all this polish and show. She could see the group from the front row gathered at the theater's branded photo backdrop from where she stood. Rachel stood at the center, hair swept into a flawless bun, smiling at the camera, one arm snug around Matt's waist in quiet claim. Beside her, an older woman, surely Matt's mother, clutched a massive bouquet of deep red roses, flanked by younger faces Evelyn guessed were cousins or close friends. Compliments, teasing remarks, and the pop of camera shutters filled the space. An invisible circle Evelyn was not invited to enter. She turned her face away, but a scrap of conversation still reached her. A young woman's voice, perhaps the one holding the camera, asked Rachel, "Why not introduce your mom?" Rachel gave a small laugh, her voice dropping, yet still carrying just enough for Evelyn to hear. "My mom tends to go off topic. I don't want to give Matt's family the wrong impression." Just a few words said lightly, almost as a joke, but each syllable fell like a sliver of cold glass, sharp and lodging deep in Evelyn's chest. She stayed still, eyes fixed elsewhere, and no one noticed she had heard. A familiar script flickered through her mind. Return to seat Z, watch the second act, hand over the lei, smile for the photos, pretend she'd heard nothing, then go home with the same hollow weight. But this time a rare, bracing clarity stopped the thought, one she had never let herself hold for long. She did not have to keep playing the predictable mother. She did not have to shrink to fit inside someone else's frame. She looked down at the lei box. Inside, the orchids were still perfect, still carrying the meaning she had placed in them. Only the intended recipient no longer deserved them. Evelyn shifted, moving with the flow of people toward the main doors, as if only stepping out for air. No one called her name. The theater doors opened, and the May air swept in, cool, dry, smelling faintly of earth after a sunny day. The last evening light clung to the red brick facades and white-trimmed windows. Golden ribbons of sun stretched across the smooth pavement, catching in the glass fronts of shuttered shops. From the busy avenue came the distant pulse of traffic, but the narrow street beside the theater was quiet save for Evelyn's footsteps and the wind threading between buildings. She strolled, letting the chill slip through her cardigan to her skin. Each step drew her farther from the cramped geometry of the seating rows, from the orbit of conversation she did not belong to. The lei box was no longer something to be given, but something awaiting a place worthy of it. On the sidewalk ahead, a young couple passed hand in hand, laughing softly, their hair burnished orange by the last of the sun. Evelyn watched them go, not with envy, but with the clear recognition that she was leaving a stage where her role no longer existed. At the corner she paused and looked back. The theater still stood, doors open, golden light spilling into the lobby. She knew the second act was about to begin. This time there was no pang of regret. No inner voice scolding her or urging her to return. Only a stillness like a quiet background score she had been seeking for years. Evelyn adjusted the scarf on her shoulders, drew the lei box closer to her chest, and continued toward the small square ahead, where she knew the wind would rise and the sky would open wide above her. Evelyn turned down the narrow street leading to the high school, a place she had visited years ago to watch a spring performance. Now, the red brick facade of the main building was bathed in the gold of evening light. The courtyard stretched wide, paved in gray stone, enclosed by two-story wings with tall windows. A light breeze drifted through, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and the metallic flap of an American flag snapping against its pole. She meant to pass straight through but noticed a small group of 8 or 9 students gathered in a loose circle near a row of stone benches. In the middle, a boy and a girl were reading lines, their voices so intent that the air around them seemed to slow. It took Evelyn a moment to recognize the words. Lines between Emily and George in our town, the very scene she had staged 20 years ago when she taught drama at another school. There was no set, no stage lighting, just 2 students in everyday clothes. Yet the way they shaped each sentence, the pauses, the glances exchanged pulled her back to those earnest, full-hearted rehearsals of the past. She stopped at the edge of the courtyard, quietly watching. A few teachers and students sat on the steps, equally hushed. This wasn't a public performance, just a scene study, a rehearsal for the real production in the auditorium. When the dialogue ended, a small round of applause broke out. The boy bowed, the girl smiled shyly. Evelyn spotted Noah, now a man in his 40s, tall and lean, hair threaded with gray, step into the circle to offer feedback. He turned, caught sight of her, and his face lit instantly. "Ms. Rose," he called, his voice a blend of surprise and delight. Several students glanced over, curious. Evelyn walked forward, smiling. "Hello, Noah. I heard you were working on our town, so," he said, "you have to stay. This is the scene you taught me when I was their age. This is Ms. Rose, the one who gave me my love for theater." Young eyes turned toward her, a few soft greetings rippling through the group. A brown-haired girl in a blue hoodie who had just played Emily asked shyly, "You directed this scene before?" Evelyn nodded, meeting the girl's gaze. She set down her tote and opened the wooden box. The faint fragrance of white orchids rose, the petals smooth, cool, and perfectly arranged. "I brought this for my daughter tonight," she said slowly, "but I think it belongs with you instead." The girl's eyes widened. She stepped back a little, unsure she'd heard right. Evelyn stepped closer, looping the lei gently around her neck. adjusting it so the blooms lay evenly across the hoodie's shoulders. In Hawaiian culture, she explained, her voice warm, a lei is given to mark important moments and to tell someone they are valued. The girl touched the petals lightly, murmuring, "Thank you." Beside her, Noah smiled with quiet understanding. "Would you like to give them some notes on the scene?" he asked. Evelyn nodded, motioning for the two young actors to return to their places. "In this moment," she said, "the line 'we don't even have time to look at one another' isn't just a complaint, it's an awakening. When you speak it, don't rush. Don't be afraid of silence. Pause on time so the audience feels how deeply you've realized it." She demonstrated, her voice low but clear enough for the group to hear. Emily nodded and tried again. This time the pause between time and to look lengthened, sufficient for her gaze to meet an imagined audience before lowering, weighted with regret. Evelyn smiled, feeling as though an invisible thread from her past had tightened, binding this moment to all the others, not through her daughter, but through these young people who still listened, still took in what she had to give. No one asked why she was there. No one demanded an explanation. There was a circle of people, a familiar scene, and a lei that had found a worthy neck. When rehearsal ended, a few students came forward to thank her. Evelyn lingered in the courtyard, watching the last of the daylight fade from the brick walls, hearing Noah's voice as he reminded the cast to gather props. A soft breeze stirred, setting the orchid petals trembling on Emily's shoulders. Evelyn knew that even if no front row seat had been saved for her tonight, she had still found herself in a place that mattered, not in the auditorium, but in the memory and growth of these young lives. That night, Evelyn drove home under the long ribbons of gold cast by the highway lights. The city receded behind her, leaving only the steady hum of the engine and the tangle of her thoughts. When she turned onto the narrow road into town, the shadows of roadside trees stretched across the pavement like dark ink strokes. Her white-painted wooden house appeared in the glow of the porch light she had switched on that morning, a small habit to ensure she always felt welcomed back. The front door gave a soft creak as she opened it, and the mingled scent of aged wood and lavender from the sachet behind the door greeted her. She hung her cardigan over the back of a chair, slipped off her shoes, set the tote on the kitchen table, and filled the kettle. While waiting for the water to boil, she opened her laptop. The screen lit up, sharpening the lines at the corners of her eyes, reflecting a calm but unyielding gaze. She logged into her online banking and scrolled to the list of autopay entries. Each payment appeared in a neat row with dates and amounts. Her eyes stopped at transfer to Rachel W., a voluntary contribution she had made every month, never asked for, never thanked for. She moved the cursor to cancel recurring payment. One click. A confirmation box appeared. "Are you sure you want to cancel this transaction?" She pressed yes. A small chime signaled success, tidy, final. It wasn't triumph she felt, but the sense of setting something back where it had always belonged. Evelyn opened her email, typed in Natalie's address, her account manager at the local branch, and wrote, "Natalie, I've canceled the autopay for Rachel as we discussed. Please confirm that this transaction is permanently locked, so it cannot be reinstated without my request." She sent it and then forwarded the same message to Noah with a note. "If you and the school foundation office are ready, let's begin the process for the Evelyn Rose Theater Scholarship. I want it open to high school students with a passion for drama, regardless of academic standing. It can be used for tuition, props, or licensing fees." She CC'd the PTA and the school foundation address, knowing Noah would take over the formal steps from here. When she clicked send, she felt she wasn't just cutting something off, she was redirecting it, from a quiet drain into something that might grow. She closed the laptop, poured Earl Grey, and carried it to the small wooden table on the porch. The May night air was cool, the scent of freshly cut grass mingling with the tea's citrus warmth. The phone buzzed on the table, breaking the stillness. A text from Rachel. "Did you leave in the middle of the show?" No apology. No question of why. Just an accusation. Evelyn looked at the screen, let it go dark, and lifted the cup to her lips. The tea's faint bitterness and bergamot lingered in her mouth, leaving a long and still finish. She didn't answer. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the kitchen window as she took the watering can to the porch and tended her pots of herbs, mint, basil, dill. She had grown them since her teaching days, when she'd used them in cooking workshops with her students. As she leaned over the basil, her phone buzzed again. Another text from Rachel. "You embarrassed me last night." Evelyn read it slowly, feeling the words drop into her memory like a pebble into water, sending ripples then vanishing. She knew this tone well, the kind that shifted blame, rewrote the story so that it ended at her fault. She set the phone face down on the arm of the wooden chair and kept watering. Droplets rolled down the leaves and fell to the soil, sounding like a quiet sigh. She knew, just as with those messages, everything would stay as it was, no reply, no explanation. It was silence by choice, not surrender. A week later, the afternoon in town drifted by as if spring was holding on to its last warmth before giving way to summer. Evelyn slipped into her familiar navy dress and draped the gray cardigan over her shoulders. No theater mask pin this time, no flowers in hand. Past the dark green maples, the high school auditorium came into view. A signboard at the gate read, "Our town senior class production. Performance license secured from Concord Theatricals." The small print carried a quiet weight, a sense of care and formality, the way a play should begin. Inside the lobby, she bought a ticket from a student in a school logo t-shirt. The girl smiled, asked her name for the arts department's special guest list, and guided her to the auditorium. Evelyn chose a seat in the middle rows, just left of center, a vantage point that gave her the whole stage, each actor's expression, the space between their lines. Not the front row, but close enough to catch the glint in an eye, the hand shift, the breath before a word. The lights dimmed, the murmurs softened. The stage opened on Grover's Corners under a warm amber glow. The stage manager's voice rang out, steady, clear, unhurried. Evelyn let herself sink into the rhythm, each line carrying her back 20 years. Tonight she'd stood in the darkened house, signaling a young Emily to slow her pace on the words. "We don't even have time to look at one another." When the scene came tonight, the girl playing Emily paused for exactly one beat, eyes lifting as if to take in the whole world. Something in Evelyn's chest loosened, then warmed, a circle closing without tension or regret. No one here knew about the front row in Boston last week, and no one needed to. She wasn't the name left off a list, a monthly autopay entry, or a figure tucked against the back wall in this space. She was Evelyn Rose, a former drama teacher, and this was her house. When the applause for the third act swelled, she stood and clapped until her hands tingled, letting her rhythm fold into the heartbeat of the room. People around her smiled and nodded as if they shared the same quiet pride. Outside, golden light spilled from the high windows onto the brick path. The May breeze was soft, carrying the scent of fresh grass and a trace of lilac from the street trees. Evelyn paused on the steps, looking back at the auditorium through the narrowing doorway. She smiled, not for anyone else but for herself, for having found her seat again, not by its physical place, but by the fullness of her presence. On the drive home, she left the radio off. The engine's hum and the steady roll of tires were enough to keep her company. The white-painted house welcomed her in stillness, the porch light casting its warm circle over the path. She hung her cardigan, made tea, and sat at the kitchen table. She didn't think about the front row seats she'd lost, or the unanswered messages. Instead, she thought of her students' faces, the quiet laughter in the wings, and the line that still rang as if meant for her. "We never have enough time to look at one another." Tonight she had looked. And she had been seen. No permission needed. No right seat by anyone else's measure. Only the place where she truly belonged. Evelyn's story isn't just about one forgotten evening or a seat in the last row of a theater. It's the journey of reclaiming her worth after years of living by other people's expectations. For so long, she'd told herself it's fine when she was left behind at the last minute, taken the seats far from the center, both literally and figuratively, because she believed family meant sacrificing without question. But that night in Boston changed everything. Standing in the lobby at intermission, the white orchid lay still in its box. Evelyn realized she no longer wanted to give her best to people who treated it as an afterthought. Leaving the theater wasn't an impulse. It was a deliberate choice, just like canceling her automatic payments and turning them into a scholarship fund for students who loved the stage. From the last row of someone else's story to a seat in the heart of her community, she had found her place again, and no one could take it away. Her story reminds us, not every invitation comes from a place of respect, And not every blood tie makes a true family. Family is made of those who see you, listen to you, and hold you close for who you are. Sometimes, loving yourself means walking away from seats that exist only in name and finding the place where you truly belong. If you've ever felt forgotten, overlooked, or pushed to step away to protect your worth, share your thoughts or story in the comments. And don't forget to like this post so it can reach others who might need to hear it. And subscribe to hear more stories that might touch that quiet place in your heart you've kept silent for far too long.